Leary?
Here.
Counsel Mercia?
Here.
Counsel Samaras?
Here.
3 present.
Okay. The purpose of, this is an ad hoc subcommittee with the sole purpose at this point in time to review 3 specific motions that were on the council floor and referred to the ad hoc subcommittee. The first motion was for the number of signatures required to get on the ballot for city council. The second motion, the number of candidates required to have a preliminary election. And the third motion, a salary adjustment for elected officials. So at this time, just to give you a brief view, the ad hoc subcommittee is just a temporary subcommittee, again, to review these issues. 2 of the 3 issues, ultimately, the number 1 and number 2, the signatures and number of candidates, if voted favorably by the city council, would require the Massachusetts state legislature to approve and ultimately the governor to sign. The third issue, a salary adjustment for elected officials, would ultimately have to be approved just by the city council. So at this time, I know we have at least 2 folks who'd like to speak on it. I'd like to entertain to have the public begin to speak on these particular motions, all 3 of them, or individuals. So I don't know if you want to come up forward. Just state your name and your address.
I'm Jack Mitchell. I live at 34 Coburn Street, and thank you, Mr. Chairman and fellow councilors. I'm going to take these items sort of out of order and speak in favor of 2 of them, and then speak in opposition to the third one. The first one that I'd like to speak in favor of is about the number of signatures required to get on the ballot. One of your former colleagues said to me some years ago that not just anybody should get to be a city councilor. And that threw me for a little loop because it sounded at first a little snobbish, right? But then, I talked to him and we, discussed it, and it made a lot of sense in that discussion. And it wasn't that, only people that come from Lowell should be city councilors, or only people that are versed in the palace intrigue of the political bubble should be city councilors. What he was saying was people that have sweat equity in the city should be the ones that kind of go through almost like a gauntlet of participation, of volunteerism, whether you come out of the neighborhood groups or whether you come from, coaching a local youth team or something, that there must be some investment and some process where you are vetted by your community, and we hope that the cream rises to the top. And I've been watching these elections now for at least a decade, and I see some very excellent candidates running, and I see some candidates that are not so excellent. I see candidates that have not really invested in their community, or based on what I'm aware of. So in looking at the data in terms of signature requirements, I went to the Secretary of State site, and they just have, for elections, there's a candidate thing here, and it talks about the signature requirements. And for a state rep, that the signature requirement is for 150. And for a state senator, the signature requirements are 300. Now, a state rep serves a population that's roughly 40,000 people. That's the city councilors and the school committee members serve a community that's 110 to 120,000 people. A state senator serves a community that's probably around 150, 160,000 people. So between 150 and 300 is kind of, if you really look at it, not so much where your office is, whether it's here in Lowell or up there in Beacon Hill, but like how many people you are actually serving. I think the signature requirement to be a city councilor and a school committee person should be bracketed somewhere between 150 to 300. I would personally make it a little bit more challenging to try to get more of the cream to rise to the top. So I'd probably put it 225, 250. To the third thing on the agenda, the salary adjustment for elected officials. I agree. I see the work that the councilors do. I see the work that the school committee members do. There's no doubt that they earn a better salary than what they're being paid right now. I see the commitment that they have to the city. Whether I agree with them on any particular vote that they take or any sort of position that they may articulate is got nothing to do with how much effort that they put into their positions. And they fully earn a better wage. And some would try to say that it incentivizes others to get included. We might tempt people to come and run. If you don't want to be a city councilor, if you want to be a city councilor for the pay, but the people that have served so far, I think you've earned it and you should adjust your salary. That said, I don't think you should do this. If you vote to do that, you shouldn't make it effective until after the next inaugural. You shouldn't vote yourselves a raise. And if the peoples have a real beef with you giving yourselves a raise, they can take that up with you in the next municipal election cycle. The last thing I'd like to talk about is the number of candidates required to have a preliminary election. All right, this one is tricky. Where I really think we should raise the bar higher to try to dissuade people that aren't committed to the city and to their community. In this, I think it's going a little bit too far, and for this reason. I've been a member of a neighborhood group. I've gone to many forums, and a lot of you that I have talked to, when you go to these forums, there's a certain complaint about how you only have X amount of minutes to sort of interact with the people that are in the room. And I agree with that. Like, if I could do the logistics, I would winnow it down so it was maybe 10 candidates at a time, so there could be a much greater dialogue. But if we flip this around, we are only getting little snippets of you. Now, incumbents have the benefit of the office to sort of, like this meeting right now is televised, and you go out to events and you interact with people, and your position sort of, and this is how actually you earn higher pay, right? You're out there, and it's not, you're serving, but in a way, your face time allows you to saturate into the community. And a challenger doesn't have that opportunity unless maybe they are really committed to the city and they have a lot of sweat equity in the city. But by raising the limit, I think you dilute the pool and the interest of the voters to a point where it just kind of washes out. And not to read into anything sinister about it, but doing that, I think, really gives the incumbents an unfair advantage, because people recognizing incumbents, people, whether they like them or not, that can cut both ways, I guess. But these other people, they're just these odd, they're not familiar with them. There's no knowledge of them whatsoever, and people tend to sort of limit what they choose from the things that they're aware of. So by growing that group out, I think would be detrimental. If you look at the election results over the years, year after year, the results come in, and if we have 18 people running for in the general election for city councilor, really there's only 12 people that are even seriously in the race based on the vote results, maybe 14. But you see, 8 to 10, 11, maybe pretty close to each other. Then there's, 12, 13, 14. Then 15, 16, 17, they just kind of go off the deep end. That's an indication of maybe where the line should be drawn. If I was king for a day, I would put the preliminary cutoff at 14. I think that would encourage people to maybe campaign through the summer and make more contact. And I think it would really, once the line was drawn at the preliminary, give the incumbents a run for their money, because they would have serious challenges. And that's not so much, I don't say that to to like tease you. I say that because I think that discussion is good. I think giving incumbents a run for their money benefits the incumbents by making them really express solid ideas with details instead of just, generalities that don't, incite anything. I think it winnows the talent pool to individuals that really can challenge counselors or incumbents or school committee members, with well thought out positions. So if it was up to me, that's what I would do. But I think that might be a bridge too far unless you're really, feeling into it. But I would just suggest that you leave it alone. And I want to sort of close on the optics potentially of the city councilors giving themselves a raise, if that's what they choose to do, which I support, but then going on and talking potentially about saving the city money by cutting out the preliminary. Because what it looks like is robbing Peter to pay Paul. And that, I just don't know if that's the type of impression. I know this council particularly, you're a group of good people. I just don't think you want to leave that lasting impression with the voters, because it's not who you are. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there any, Mr. Nutter? Your name and address, Mr. Nutter?
Jerry Nutter, 9 Whitney Ave, Lowell. I'm here to talk in favor of all three motions that are on the floor tonight. Raising the signatures to 100 shows that a challenger is serious. Getting 50 signatures for just about anything is fairly easy. Getting 100 requires work, and that shows a serious commitment by anyone who, whether that's an incumbent or a challenger. You can't coast with just 50. In a city of 100,000, getting 100 signatures is not asking a lot. And when you look at cities like Worcester and Springfield, it's still less than they require. As far as changing the number of people in the preliminary, I kind of disagree with the last speaker, because I think if you raise it up to 22 or 25, you're giving a challenger a lot more time. He has now all the way to November. He knows he's going to be in it for the long haul. He gets to get his message out there a little longer. He gets to get out and meet people a little longer. He also gets the opportunity to maybe see what happens here on the council in October and November that may be an opportunity for him to speak or her to speak and find something that they can use to help their campaign. So I don't think raising it, besides with the fact that it would save some money for the city, I think it helps a challenger. It gives them more time to be in the race and to try to get their name out there, whether that just sets them up as a base for the next time or not. It is not punitive, I don't think. And finally, on the issue of a raise, everyone should realize, if they don't, that even if you vote this raise, it does not take effect until a new council, the school committee, is hired. So technically, none of you are guaranteed to be here next time, so you're not voting to give yourselves a raise, you're voting to give the next people a raise. And I have not seen anyone talk about any specific salary, although I have thrown out some figures myself, which I think is appropriate because, like Jack, I have been following now for a good 10 years and have seen the time it takes, not only on the individuals, but what people don't realize is the time it takes on your families. You are away not only for a city council meeting, but subcommittee meetings and neighborhood meetings and flag raisings and responding to Grant or responding to Teddy or responding to me. You all take time, and the neighborhood groups, you're always out there with them. This is not just a 1 or 2 night event. You are all, your time is valuable and your time is being used in a lot of ways. And the small increase, at least the small increase that I've floated out there, I don't think is anything negative. I think it's your time has value and your service has value, and people should be able to value that service, and we thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just before I recognize councilors, to give some kind of structure to it, well, we have 3 separate motions. What we'll do is we're going to take each one up first, talk about them. Ultimately, this committee only makes recommendations to the full council, obviously. In addition, I think part of it maybe when we get into this, the one thing I think you're incorrect, I think your council could, in theory, if they wanted to, which I don't agree with, but you could, in theory, have a salary adjustment in a calendar year. But just to actually talk about that, we can get into that in that motion. But the first motion is the number of signatures required to get on the ballot. It was made by Councilor Mercier and referred to the ad hoc subcommittee, so I recognize Councilor Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just say, I hope this building is still standing up when I say this remark. Never, ever in my wildest dreams did I ever believe the day would come that I would agree with everything that Jerry Nutter said. Hold on to your seats. I can't believe it. Oh, my goodness. Everything that he said, I agree with. And the reason that I made this first motion was because I felt that I want serious people to, you know, we could have 100 people, but and I don't really even mind if there's a primary, but the fact remains that I think people are just putting their names on the ballot just to say that they ran for city council, and I think it's a very serious thing. We have candidates nights and people don't even show up for it. I want serious people that want to run for this. This is a very serious, I don't take myself serious, but I take this position very serious, and I think that people that put their name on the ballot shouldn't just do that and sit back and see how many votes they're going to get. I think they should prove to us that they want it and save the taxpayers some money. So I think one way to do that is to raise the signatures. I don't think it's so burdensome. People have trouble with even 50. They come back and they don't have enough signatures. We cancel some out in the election office and they don't make the cut. They run on a sticker. It's bizarre, but I think 100 is not so burdensome. I think it would just be a suggestion. Either people on my colleagues support it or they don't, but I'm putting it out there to say that I support this motion. I don't know what my colleagues would think.
Okay, Councilor Samaras?
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I want to thank the two gentlemen, Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Nutter, for coming before us. Actually, what would be nice on a night like this with these type of issues, there should be many more people here discussing this issue. And I think that's what all of us are concerned about, because I know the two of you with your blog sites talk about, getting people out to vote, because that's what makes the process work. And so sometimes when you come up with issues like this, are we trying to lessen it or what have you? I think it's, in a sense, trying to make the process more important to people. The issue on the number of signatures, I do believe there should be a raise in the number of signatures, 100, 150. I'm not sure at this particular point. But the thing is, it does prevent people who, what I've said in the past is, I don't want to discourage anybody from running for office. But there are some people we know that I'd like to see my name on the paper. I'd like to see my name on the ballot. And you'll never see them again. That's not right. I mean, because I think that's what sometimes gets people upset at the process. So I think it should be in such a way that it makes it significant to apply to be as a candidate. The number of candidates required to have a preliminary, I haven't set my mind on that just yet.
Why don't we just take them one at a time, because we're going to have to
Okay.
make a recommendation or not make a recommendation to the full council.
Okay, but what I'd like to finish stating is that I think all of us have given this a lot of thought. And the idea of giving this about thought is also about talking about how can we reach out to our constituents and to the people of Lowell to state that running for office is a good thing. Trying to be a candidate and trying to do the best you can is a good thing for the city of Lowell. How can we convince our constituents that it's even more important that you get out and vote? I think that's what the two gentlemen who've been before us tonight have talked about in the past. It's about getting people out to vote. And that's what we're trying to do. I mean, to make the process, you make the process fair by involving more people. The more people who become involved, the more people who, whether they agree with us or disagree, we agree with each other or disagree, it makes the process work. And that's what I'd like to see happen at this point. Thank you.
Councilor Rourke?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do also agree with the motions that I hear this evening. I do believe that raising the signatures will prove someone is serious about running. I initially had some thoughts to really increase the amount of signatures, but I do think somewhere around 100, 150 does make the person that's interested in running a serious candidate. It does force you to get out to the certain parts of the city, certain neighborhoods to obtain those signatures, ask for them, and actually to, start to get your message across, start to make connections, and start campaigning, basically. A modest, raise, if it does bring out more candidates for office, is also something that I would be in favor of, to encourage more people to run for city council. And the Council of Mercy is suggesting about raising the number of candidates. I think that if you're going to raise the number of signatures, I think those people that do get those signatures deserve the entire campaign season to run and to get their message across. And I do think that would create a more diverse and a better campaign season. So with regards to the motions in front of us, Mr. Chairman, I would support those this evening. Thank you.
Councilor Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too want to echo the sentiment of my colleagues that, this is a lot of work. And that goes from gathering signatures from the day you pull papers and gather signatures. And it should be a lot of work. That's the way it ought to be. It should not come easy, and I know it was not easy for me. I had to do this twice, and that's after serving on a land use board for over 10 years, as well as being very active in the community with events. And but then maybe that's why I enjoy this and love this so much, is it did not come easy, and it took a lot of hard work. And to echo Councilor Rourke's comments is that, I think it's healthy for the candidate to have to sit in front of the supermarket or go to events and gather signatures and meet the community. That's what this is all about. So I think, 50 is grossly inadequate, if you want my honest opinion. We're not trying to stop democracy by any stretch. Everybody has the right to run. But we just want, I believe that the sentiment of the council is pretty much the same, that we just want serious candidates. That's all. And you're going to put in the work that was required to get elected. And that starts with gathering signatures. And 50 is, in my opinion, a little too easy. So I support raising it minimum of 100 to 150 on the maximum side. So that's my recommendation, and we'll like to see what my other colleagues think, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Leahy?
Thank you. I agree with the comments made tonight that, this is a lot of work, but mostly it's what you put into it. And I think all of us put a lot of time into this position, and it would really help to get serious people for this position. If you're really serious about it, then going out to get 100 or 200 signatures shouldn't be a problem. It makes you a better candidate. You're out into more neighborhoods because of the more signatures, and gives you a better idea of what you're doing, why you're running. So I would be all in favor of moving the number up. I wouldn't be opposed to anything 150, 200 signatures.
Okay, any other counselor? Okay. I agree with the sentiments. We're taking them one at a time, so the number of signatures required in the ballot was a motion referred to the ad hoc subcommittee. I guess one thing I would want from me, if I'm going to vote for it too, is make sure whatever we do, it does get referred as part of the motion for a public hearing. Part of the confusion we had tonight was, we had a personal subcommittee, had these in place, so some folks might have thought that was where the forum would begin. I think we should definitely, if we do make a recommendation to the council, that we make sure that it's in the form of, going to a public hearing for that vote tonight, or no recommendation. So I don't know, members of the subcommittee, Councilor Mercier?
I don't know how my colleagues feel, but I'd like to recommend that we send to the legislature to increase the signatures from 50 to 100.
Without public hearing, would you make that as a part of your motion?
Well, it's a recommendation.
Okay.
It's got to go before a public hearing at a particular status, so
Okay.
I'm not going to say leave it in the dark. So my motion is to recommend that we raise the signatures from 50 to 100.
Okay, is there a second on the motion?
I'll second that.
Second by Councilor Samaras. Just a question to the city solicitor. Do we have to go, should the motion say something going to a public hearing, or will it automatically go to a public hearing? I guess that's my...
If you wanted it to go to a public hearing, I think what Councilor Mercier might have been referring to is that because of the very process that it's following, there will be a public
Okay.
hearing. component even at the state level, but certainly if you wanted it at the local level, then this can be advertised and made part of a local public hearing as well, and that should just be part of the motion.
Okay. Would you-
And then from that point, whatever we decide on the 3 questions, go to the state legislature. Okay, but I think if we hold a public hearing, it's not what we conspired to do, but we allow the public to have input on it. Okay? Would you think?
Right. The first 2 components that the council is considering would ultimately have to go before the state.
Yeah.
And in that sense, as compared to the charter change provision, it's what's being proposed by the council is in fact being reviewed by outside parties. And with respect to the salary, that's done by ordinance, which would require a public hearing as well.
Okay.
So I'm thinking that all 3 could go to a public hearing as well, so that we show to the public, it isn't what we decide, this is what we asked for. You might disagree, maybe we might tweak it again,
Right.
so that you have an input into this. So the first one is the recommendation from increasing 50 to 100,
And
the
then-
signatures,
And then to go to a public hearing to have that,
right.
okay. So,
All
is-
3 go into a public hearing at the
Okay.
same time to not make it confusing.
okay. So the motion on the floor right now is for the first motion to raise the number of signatures from 50 to 100, to make that recommendation to the full council, and if so agreed, to post that as a public hearing for a future final vote. So I guess, City Clerk, if you could call the roll.
Could I just ask you a question
Mr.
before?
Leahy.
Is it,
Through you to the chair, Mr. Lee.
through you as
Yeah,
chair?
that's
Yes.
right.
I'm not sure, because this never came up yet. I just, with all due respect, I didn't know if we should just, 100 just seems like, should we go at least 125, so we're not going back and forth? I didn't know how the maker of the motion would feel about that, through the chair.
I think it's an even number to make it simpler.
So we'll go 100, 150,
100.
or 200?
Yeah, I say to 100.
Okay, all right.
I'm sorry, but that's, I don't want to confuse people. 100 is good.
Okay. the
I
city-
don't think it's burdensome. I think it's just saying that if you really want it, you're going to have to get 50 more than you would have before. Sorry.
Okay. City Clerk, call the roll, please.
Counsel Leary,
Yes.
Counsel Mercia,
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
3 yeas.
Okay. The second motion referred is the number, to take the number of candidates required to have a preliminary election, to increase the number of candidates for preliminary elections. So I don't know if any members, Councilor Mercer.
Yes, thank you. I made this motion because I remember State Senator Steve Panagiotakis, and we pleaded to him during economic hard times if we could just bypass the primary, because it seemed like we were eliminating 1 or 2 people for the sake of $65,000. Probably at that time was $45,000, but we had a very difficult time financially, and we thought we could save some money by doing that. So Steve brought it before the legislatures, and they said yes, it was fine. We did it again 2 years later, and he came back to us as a council, and he said, I'm not going to do it again. My colleagues think that this isn't right. If you want to do something, change the rules, but don't have me go back. And that's what I strictly remember. And then we eliminated probably 1 or 2 people, and it rose to 65,000. I thought that was kind of tough for the people, and I'm not trying to stop a democratic process. I'm not. He said change the rules, and so I thought that instead of eliminating 1 person, we would try to open it up to 25 people before we eliminate anybody. Therefore, we could all ride it out until the final election, give everybody a fair shot, and at the same time, save some money. Not so much to save money that we could give it back to ourselves. I never looked at it that way. I mean, it's kind of bizarre to look at it that way, but it does make sense, and I don't really want that appearance to say I'm trying to save money so I can get it for myself. Oh my gosh, really, I really don't want to do that. I'm thinking of what former State Senator Steve Panagiotakis said. I'm not doing it again, change the rules, and this is what I'm trying to do. Now, I went from 19, because it's double plus 1, it's 9 and 9 is 18, plus 1 is 19. In the primary, you eliminate one person, so usually we'd have like 19 to 22 people. I said, let's raise it to 25. That's simply my opinion. I'm not saying I'm shoving my opinion down your throat. If you think maybe it should be 22, that's fine. I personally think that 22 is not cutting it. It's cutting it too close for what I'm intending. So I would have said 25. So that's my opinion. You have a right to weigh in on it. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Samaras?
Thank you. Councilor Mercier makes some good points, but my own thought process, I looked at the number of running, and you divide 9, you come out with 4.5, so, math making it a whole number, I came out with 23. I was looking at 23 as a number of people before we did any elimination. So that's what I'm thinking at this particular point.
Okay. Councilor Belanger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm once again in agreement with Councilor Mercier, but first I'd like to start off by saying that this is probably not a sitting councilor who was benefited more greatly from preliminary elections than I, being the last 2 elections on the outside looking in and realized how hard that I had to pick it up. But with that being said, I work for the city of Lowell taxpayers, and what I saw the last election was that, a number of candidates that, some didn't even show up at debates. And, there were some who showed up at debates but didn't work. And there were some who didn't do either. And so I saw the city kind of wasting $80,000 to $100,000. And it's the taxpayers who we represent. So if I were to sit here for selfish reasons, I would like to carry preliminary elections. But in the name of the taxpayers, that I don't think the last few elections it's been exactly a good investment for the city. So unfortunately, that I really don't think that 18 is a proper number. I really don't, from what I saw with my own eyes now. And I was out there; we were all out there. That's how we all got reelected. And I didn't see, roughly a handful or so candidates to be found anywhere. There were some who worked very, very hard too. Some took it very seriously and worked very hard. But again, there were others who did not. So I would support raising, the number of candidates to 25 for those above reasons that I just didn't see the city spending money and a good investment at the last preliminary election. And it disheartens me to say that in a way, but that's the way I feel. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other councilor like to speak? Councilor Milanazzo? And then Councilor Leahy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm actually going to take a different approach and come out and say I think we should keep it at 19. Actually, I know that what Councilor Mercier has proposed and what Councilor Belanger said, it makes sense from a fiscal standpoint. But at the end of the day, when you look at the fact that we have a $365 million budget, spending $75,000, in my opinion, on a preliminary election, it's really good for the community because it really, in my opinion, shows democracy, gets people out, gets them interested in campaigning. I think that having a preliminary election has benefited those of us on the council. It shows where we are in September, and goes. Some of us, me included, have to work harder to make sure that we break into the top 9 come election. So, at the end of the day, I would support keeping it the way it is. And again, I just think that based upon changing the number to 100, I think you get more serious candidates. So we may end up having a preliminary, even if it goes to 23 or 25. But I think a preliminary is good for a city the size of Lowell to keep interest in and transparency in elections. Thank you.
Councilor Leahy?
Thank you. After giving this a lot of thought, I tend to agree with Councilor Milanazzo. Someone had approached me and asked me that if we change the number up to, say, 24, 25 candidates, would that be too confusing for the general election to have 25 names to go through, 25 people to decide from? So at first I thought, maybe we should go up to 24, 25. Then I gave that a lot of thought, and I thought maybe that person was right. And I do agree that a city this size, with our budget, it really shouldn't be a burden to have, preliminary if the numbers trigger it. The one suggestion I would make is maybe, you know, we want to consider if it does or doesn't go anywhere, you know, maybe we just, if you're one over, then you don't have the preliminary. But I could see that being as an exception. But I would hate to see us having too many names on the ballot and people being disinterested and, or confused, or, you know. We want to make it easier on voting day too, so we have to consider that. Thank you.
Now, just from my own personal view, I think, you know, the last time around, we eliminated one person, and that's, in my mind, that was essentially a waste of money, but also I felt ultimately that candidate was only one person out of a group. So that was, for me, that was, I won't say I want to feel bad for the individual, but it was, we put an inordinate amount of effort for one person, so we could have, the way I looked at it, it was a poll. And we paid a pretty expensive poll for everybody. That's just one opinion. I think what Mr. Mitchell said, actually, I like to think about that, because it actually makes some sense that you leave it wide open, but you trim it down to 14. It's actually, you're really competing heavy at that point, and the numbers, instead of having, 18 people to look at, you got a little less, which makes it more challenging, which makes it does make it more competitive. I'm not sure where I fall with that right now. I think one thing that's very important to me in all three of the motions tonight, that they go to a public hearing. Because I'd like to really explore what Mr. Mitchell said further to see how that pans out and how it relates. I do think, however, eliminating one person like we did last time was not a positive thing for the city. I don't think it was a good thing. We all could have campaigned hard in the summer. I think what happened ultimately is you wait to see where you are on the poll, and it's not disrespectful. I mean, if I was an incumbent too, I would have done the same thing. And then you find out if you're near, and if you are near, you start campaigning hard. That's an intelligent thing to do, actually. I just feel bad for the folks that came in. If you come in 15th, basically, like Mr. Mitchell was saying, you're out of it. You're not getting in. So you basically got to sit there for the month of October and endure that pleasure for, $70,000 or $100,000. So I guess at this point, I would support going to a public hearing to look at raising the number. The question is, do we make that recommendation to the full council, and we have a good debate on it on the floor? I could easily change my mind after looking into it, because again, what Mr. Mitchell articulated actually intrigues me, to say the least. So I don't know, the maker of the motion, if you'd want to make a motion at this point to recommend to the full council a number that we could look at. Or, the overall mission of the ad hoc subcommittee is we could easily have another meeting with more data too, if we want to do it that way, to take a look at it further. Its mission is to meet one time, in theory, but its mission is to meet on these three issues. So we couldn't, in fact, have one more meeting to discuss this particular motion if the committee wants to do that. So I don't know, Councilor Mercier?
I don't know that I have support for raising it from 19 to 25. I could probably support going from 19 to 23. That would be still 5 people. So I would recommend with the subcommittee that we recommend raising the figure from 19 to 23.
Okay. Councilor Samaras?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Councilor Mercier. When Councilor Milanazzo, the points that Councilor Milanazzo brought up are really strong points, because myself being a traditionalist, this is almost a direction I would go in or stay in at this particular time. And as Chairman Leary stated, other ideas were also brought forth. But I have thought about this process, and, numbers are arbitrary. But the thing is, I've settled in on 23 at this particular point, and I'd like to support Councilor Mercier and make the motion that we present the number 23, which can be discussed further.
Councilor, would you make that in the form of a public motion?
Yes.
Public hearing, excuse me. Okay. So Councilor Samaras makes a motion to go from the current number up to 23 for a preliminary election and to send it to public hearing.
And a second.
Second by Councilor Mercier. City Clerk, take the roll, please.
Council Leary?
Yes.
Council Mercier?
Yes.
Council Samaras?
Yes.
3 yeas.
The third motion is to a salary adjustment for elected officials. The city solicitor was kind enough to provide the actual, the date last time the city council took this position up. So I guess I would ask the city solicitor if she could just kind of walk us through what we did, what the body did at the last point in time.
Sure. pursuant to the Mass General laws, any change in the salary would need to be done by an ordinance. So again, that would require a public hearing. The ordinance also requires a 2/3 vote. And the increase could not occur in the same year in which it was passed. And then there's also further language regarding not passing it or not having it take effect, in which such increase or reduction is voted. No change in salaries shall be made between the election of a new council and the qualifications of a new council.
Councilor Samaras?
To the city solicitor, like what, new year, another year, or term?
It would be a year. So, for example, technically, you could have a vote in a change in the summer, and it wouldn't take effect until the following January.
Okay.
But
Or-
that's looking at it purely as a calendar
Or we
year.
could suggest to go to the next term ourselves, or is it by law?
Yes, both. The council has historically enacted these for the next council. And in fact, when Councilor Leary and I were speaking, I believe that's what he was saying, that he was looking at, was for a new council. And that's historically what they have done.
Thank you.
Okay. Any, Councilor Mercer?
When we do this, are we including the school committee as well? How are we doing with the school committee? Or are they,
It would depend.
or
excuse me.
do they do their own? I don't know, how does this work?
In the past, I mean, that's something that you could contact them. In the past, there have been changes, I think, just for the mayor's salary, as well as the council. The school committee, I believe, had taken place separately. This particular provision in Section 17A actually relates specifically to the mayor or members of the city council.
Well, if I might comment on that.
I believe that the salaries for school committee members, they were also done by ordinance, but I believe they were done by a separate ordinance.
Separate ordinance,
So,
because I just want to say something about the school committee. You don't really know how difficult it is until you've been a mayor and you've been on that side where you oversee the school committee. I don't know how they do it. I've never had a minute rest because there were so many subcommittees, like I couldn't even fathom it. And I'm telling you, what they get is minimal compared to the work that they do. And you would never know that if you were just a city councilor, because you don't deal with that until you're the mayor. And I saw firsthand how difficult it is and how tedious their duties are. So I don't want to get a raise or suggest anything for ourselves and know that they're not going to have any part in this. So that's why I ask this, because
That's a
Jim,
very
you
good
know
question.
what
Yeah.
I'm talking about.
Both Jims know, yeah.
Yeah.
So, John, I guess the question is to the city solicitor, do we have to, is it appropriate, or what's the legal requirements to ask for that type of ordinance? I mean, should we be asking for them for an opinion on it, or what is our best practices historically?
sorry. That's something I can look into and report back to the council on the school committee portion of it. What I suspect, sitting here this evening, is that they go through a very similar, well, I know they go through an ordinance, and so the process would be very similar to this process. It would all ultimately flow through the city council.
So ultimately, they're going to have to budget for it, so they would probably have to agree to it, because
Right.
if you don't budget it, you don't.
Right, as a practical matter, I think it would make sense to be getting some sort of input.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I
From
guess from a
the
legal
other side.
standpoint, we would have three different, the way this motion is looking at all three,
Mm-hmm.
we in theory could have three separate, if we gave a raise to the school committee, that'd have to be one ordinance,
Mm-hmm.
if it's the council, another, and if the mayor would be another. So in theory, three,
Right.
not in theory, but legitimately, three different motions,
Right.
ordinances and
Yeah.
motions.
Well, right, two ordinances and two more public hearings
Okay,
on the other issue. Yeah.
all right. Any other counselor want to speak on that? Oh, Counselor Belanger? Oh.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is obviously, touchy ground here, if you will. But to echo Councilor Mercier's statement that, yeah, the school committee should most certainly be in the mix here. I mean, that board works extremely hard, and they are extremely committed at the same time. And $6,000 for what they do is really, you wonder how we get the amount of candidates to even run when it involves that kind of time commitment. First of all, I want to thank the speakers, Mr. Nutter and Mr. Mitchell, for speaking. These are two very involved citizens of our city that have rather large networks on social media with government. So maybe, Mr. Chairman, through you to the speakers, that maybe a census, if they could conduct a census, they reach out to several thousands of people to see what the electorate feels about this. Obviously, we're going to have a public hearing, but Mr. Nutter and Mr. Mitchell have large audiences out there, and maybe they wouldn't mind gauging their viewers and listeners as to how they feel about this too, and that will help give this council a gauge. But let's take this week for example. We're going to be out pretty much 5 nights this week. This is just 1 week as an example. We had a subcommittee by Councilor Moore ran on the road that went very well last night. And this is not a complaint. This is what we signed on for, and we all enjoy this job immensely. And absolutely no one signed on for this for the money. That's for sure. But when you get to this point, you see what's involved. I know we have 20-year incumbents like Councilor Mercy or Elliott who've been doing it a long time. This week alone is going to be a 5-night commitment. And I'm going to enjoy every minute of it. There's no two ways about it. But it's a lot of time. So that needs to be looked at, And if you compare, the mayor supplied us with, the pay scales with other gateway cities, if you will, or cities to our size, and that, the Fitchburg pays $22,000, and their population is less. Lynn pays $25,000. Waltham pays $20,000. New Bedford pays $21,000. And Worcester is nearly $30,000. Now, I'm not suggesting we should be that high, but maybe we should look at this pay scale and where we stand. But one thing I will not support is giving this current council a raise under any circumstances. It would be for the next council. That would be January of 2018, I believe, that inauguration. That council would receive all raises, nothing to do with this existing council. But, myself and my colleagues are working very hard. We're very committed. And, I'd like to open it up for a public hearing, see what the public thinks and the electorate thinks, and get some feedback, Mr. Chairman. I thank you very much.
Councilor Rourke?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There has been some talk, I know Mr. Chairman and I have spoken about this, of the idea of getting the community more involved in this sort of decision, whether you have neighborhood leaders, community leaders, business leaders that can get involved and maybe form some sort of commission that can discuss the community's thoughts on this. It's very tough, I think, for the council itself to vote on a pay raise or whatnot. I mean, it's just a suggestion that has been thrown out there. Maybe we can request the manager look into the idea of, him reaching out to the community to put together, a panel or some sort of commission to take a look at. It has been almost 20 years now, I think, since 17 years now since this has been enacted. So just an idea, and again, only speaking because it is very difficult to be an elected official to vote yourself for any type of raise. Thank you.
Councilor Malazzo? No? Okay. I just think, I think we should do it. If we do it, we should do it in the next council. I agree with that, and I think it definitely should go to a public hearing. But one thing I would make a recommendation, if I get a motion for it, is we add another ad hoc subcommittee meeting. Let's reach out to the school committee to see, one, if they have interest, because ultimately, if we're going to do it, we should do for all, not just for one side of it. The point and part of that is ultimately they're going to have to budget it. We have to pass the ordinance. If there's no interest to even explore that, then we should at least reach out to them to see where their opinions are. Sure. We can do once we receive that, we can set up a quick meeting. It shouldn't take that long. And then ultimately have that discussion in the full body in terms of, do we want to go to a commission? Do we want to make decisions? What numbers are we going to make? Ultimately, I think every member of the council has supported is we go to a public hearing regardless at the end of whatever we decide. So I guess I'll make that as a recommendation
Sure.
for a motion.
So whatever you said,
Okay.
I seconded.
So the motion is to reach out to the school committee to see if there is interest in terms of looking at their stipend, and then setting up another ad hoc subcommittee to make our final recommendation to the full council with the expectation that we go to a public hearing or make changes in another direction. Councilor Samaras?
Get that,
second?
Michael?
Yeah,
I got it.
I'll type it up.
But I would just like to add, in support of Councilor Rourke's idea of the possibility of a commission. No one knows us better than the neighborhood group leaders and other community leaders. And there comes certain times when you're required to have outside input.
Okay. I think what we could do is at least reach out to the school committee. If there's no interest, then we know where we're going with that direction. If there is, and we can have that discussion, I would think relatively quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor, second by Council Mercier, to make that recommendation tonight to the city council. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Make a motion to adjourn, unless there's any other.
I think that should have went roll call because it's money.
I'm sorry, it's true. Roll call,
Counsel Leary.
yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
All those in, 3 yes. Make a motion to adjourn by Council Mercier, second
so
by
moved.
Councilor Samaras. All in favor, aye.
Aye. Great job. Righty then.